it's a toss-up between what issue is 1, 2, or 3. But I definitely think that those are the same 3 things that I've heard, not just when I've talked to people here in Atlanta, but when I've gone out to some of the rural parts of the state, when I've gone to Kemp events and Abrams events. Those are the main issues. It's just that they have differing opinions on who they think is going to do a better job solving it. And so I think we have some sound I want to play from you, a voter I spoke to. Her name is Kat. She actually just moved here from Washington, D.C. She said, when I first asked her, economy is the top of the list for her. But listen to how she said that there can be, at times, some conflicting interests when it comes to the things that she thinks about when she's voting. Here's a little bit of what she told me.
So, sometimes they contradict each other depending on the candidate that you speak of, but I would say that I did economy, crime and safety issues, and then the abortion issue.
In that order?
Yes.
Got it. You know what I think is interesting also, Hallie, is that's what we've heard from the candidates on the campaign trail when it comes to Stacey Abrams, Governor Brian Kemp. The economy really has been at the top. But from Stacey Abrams, she's repeatedly tried to bring in abortion as an issue. She's brought in the gun law here in Georgia. But she's always pivoted in large ways back to making it an economic issue, essentially saying that, listen, if companies don't like Georgia's abortion law, if companies don't like the gun laws here, they're going to pull out. That's going to be a financial burden for people in Georgia. So she's wrapped all of those together and taken it straight back to the economy. I do think that something that we've heard also from voters, though, is Governor Kemp's decision to make Georgia the first state to reopen. That's something else that voters have told me. Either they love that decision, it was good for their business, it was good for their bottom line, and they praise him for that, or others who say it was premature, it was dangerous. They say that it was just a money-driven decision and something that put their lives and the health of Georgians at risk. So that's another major issue that we're hearing. Also traces back to the economy, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you, Blaine. That is super smart. I'm glad you're there on the ground, as always, to bring us what voters are thinking, what you see as the sort of reported analysis and breakdown there. For more of that, let me go out to Arizona, because it's another important state. Ali Rafa is there, I think, and she's going to be coming to us here live to talk through what she is seeing on the ground. And we've been talking about these exit polls, Ali. We're going to talk more about that with Ben Camisar in just a second here. But the idea of election denialism is a big one here, the idea of threats to democracy. And we have seen here that is perhaps less of a motivating issue for voters generally based on some of these exit polls. All 3 candidates for statewide office in Arizona, for governor, for secretary of state, for attorney general in Arizona on the Republican side, are all election deniers or skeptics. One of only 3 states in the country where that's the case. The other key one is Michigan. Big implications in both of those states for 2024.
Huge implications, and that's something that we have been monitoring for weeks now, really, how this race is mirroring so many other races across the country. That's really testing the candidacies of these election deniers running for office. I can tell you from being on the ground here talking to voters, people who say they're registered Democrats, registered independents, when I ask them what issues are most important to them, really what we heard was what we've been hearing for weeks now, that the economy, inflation, are top of mind for people here in Arizona, as we've seen with people all across the country. And I spoke with Democrats and independents who also said that because of these top issues, they decided to split their vote. They actually voted for Republican Kari Lake, who, as you mentioned, has been denying the results of the 2020 election, hasn't really committed to accepting the results of this election if she loses. And they said that they split their vote, voting for Republicans at the top of the ticket, voting for Democrats lower down on the ballot in local elections and in propositions. But that is something that we're seeing a trend in, that the economy, inflation, top of mind, not just for people here in Arizona, but for people all over the country, Hallie.
Ali Rafa live for us in Mesa, Arizona. Ali, thank you. Ben, let me ask you this. Ben Camisar, who's still with us here on set from election headquarters. What are you seeing, if anything, that from your expert perspective here is surprising you in these exit polls so far?
Yeah, so one of the the big question, right? Economics versus abortion, right? We look at these numbers. On one side, obviously, it's been the Republican messaging on economics. You've got 46% of people say their family finances are worse. You've got inflation as the top issue. And then you've got more voters saying Biden policies hurting them versus helping them. So on the flip side, you have abortion, right? These exit polls show that the majority of people are either angry or dissatisfied with the decision on Roe v. Wade. But when you look at the party breakdown on what party do you trust more to handle abortion, Democrats are winning that by 10 points. So for a lot of voters, they may be dissatisfied with Roe, but they're still sticking with, they think the Republicans could handle that issue better. Our last NBC poll that asked this question in September had Democrats up 22 points. So if that number doesn't get better, then it's not going to be a breakaway blowout issue for Democrats.
And I think the point that you're also making is that Democrats need it to be a breakout issue if they have a hope of kind of holding on to some of these closer seats, you think?
They were hoping that that was the kind of the message that would bring undecideds, that would bring folks that were kind of
independents,
those
right.
independents, yeah. And you're seeing, if you're just, the party's just up 10 points on that question, it begs, you know, the Democrats are going to want to see that number go up as more exit poll data comes in.
We know that the issue of abortion access has been front and center in the state of Michigan, where Prop 3 is on the ballot. It is literally, right, on the ballot, a measure that would basically scrap this 1930s era law in Michigan that restricted abortion access. Yamiche Alcindor is there. And Yamiche, this has been, I think, the motivating issue, the motivating factor in the Michigan race. I'm going to throw an exit poll number at you because we saw it scroll across the bottom of our screen. On the issue of not abortion, but who do you trust to run elections? 47% of voters in our exit polls said only Gretchen Whitmer, the Democratic candidate. 40% said only Tudor Dixon, the Republican candidate. There is a lot at stake everywhere, and that is no less true in the state that you are posted up in.
Certainly, and those exit polls are really interesting because it shows that this is a contentious race, and it also shows you that top of mind are really candidates in Gretchen Whitmer and Tudor Dixon. So, of course, abortion is quite literally on the ballot in 5 states, including, if we put it up for people, there's Michigan, there's California, there's Vermont, Kentucky, and Montana. In California, Vermont, and Michigan here, what you're seeing is referendums that are asking voters whether or not they want to enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. And the Democratic governor who's running for re-election, Gretchen Whitmer, she's made abortion a central part of her closing message, saying women's rights have to be protected in this state. You're also seeing the exact opposite argument on the Republican side, with Tudor Dixon saying that there should not be access to abortion, including in cases of rape and incest. She's also been making the case that the economy is the top issue on people's minds, and that people should also be thinking about education and parents' rights. I want to show you just a little bit of where I am. I'm in Grosse Pointe, which is a politically diverse and racially diverse part of their state. People here are voting are filling out their voter information cards. Then I want to take you on a little bit of walk because it's democracy in action today. We're walking here to where people are actually casting their ballots. There's a line here where people are in this room. They're securely walking in there. Everything seems to be going smoothly. And some of the things that you hear really